You're missing out on the content.
The content.
We have so much
Okay,
content.
now it's on, so we can stop talking.
Oh yeah, now we can be quiet and awkward, and sip our drink.
My first attempt at a cocktail, believe it or not.
Really?
A properly alcoholic one, anyway. Because, I mean, of course, I'm sure we all did the thing where, like, you go to a fast food restaurant and
I
you
don't
just
go to a fast food restaurant.
like as a teenager, and
You go to the Coke dispenser
and you just mix a bunch of crap together and see what happens.
do the
I thought I was so funny when I was doing that.
It's like,
15-year-old James.
The wolves.
It was just more of an evidence that I didn't have a life.
Everybody has done it. But the ones that it's really fun to do it with are some of the nicer places that have like the dispenser with the touch screen where you can choose all the flavors.
Oh, yeah.
Cherry Coke and the other Coke stuff. So you like do a couple different flavors of the same thing and mix them all together, and it's even worse.
Can I turn this without it going?
Not really. This will probably be the part I cut for the intro music anyway. So
Perfect.
I gotta move mine around a little bit. This is a clamp. So if you
Easy clamp.
press it, it will loosen.
Oh, it loosened with the clamp.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, thank you.
Well,
This is better.
for reasons, John has to hold the microphone again
Damn it.
every single time he comes
That's
on
our
the
one.
podcast.
Dang it.
You got it out of the way quickly.
Now
Now people know this is a mature podcast.
I have to put the explicit tag on there. John, what have you done? I've actually never done that, nor will I. We don't. It's not like we stand to lose anything if we get slapped.
They could slap us. It would hurt.
Oh boy, and knock us all the way down to one listener.
Yep.
That's a 50% decrease in listenership.
It is.
boy.
Exactly.
I don't know if we could survive that.
I don't think so.
The zero monetary value we're
I
getting
mean,
back.
the two listeners will become one by the beginning of February anyway.
Yeah, so I guess that'll be a 50% reduction.
Yeah. All maintaining the same number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're coming down.
Yep, this is John's last guest episode as a single man. Probably
We could do it next week.
Could if we wanted to
If we wanted to
prove
double
that
up.
wrong, but in
Until
lieu,
then,
if that doesn't happen, John is and the Faith are gonna get married.
this is going to be the last recorded evidence that he was single.
Yeah,
So the last recorded.
I mean, there's plenty of evidence of
Well,
that John was very.
I still have
single.
2 Friday funnies to record.
Oh,
So.
sure.
Are you not allowed to do those once you're done? Once you're married, or
No, I'll just be married by then.
well, there you go.
And there will be no more recorded evidence of me being single.
Yep,
Sorry, ladies.
and students.
This guy is a action movie starring.
Have you been on the podcast since you
Qui-Gon
started?
Jinn.
Since you started teaching, John?
Yes?
Which time? I'm forgetting.
I don't know.
I feel like I don't know. It's been a while since we've had
No,
you.
I
on.
definitely
think
have.
Last time he was on, I wasn't here.
I definitely have because
So it was probably over the summer. I don't know.
I remember talking about students.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know.
Well, it's been a hot minute anyway.
Speaking of students, I have a story about.
Tell us your school
I'm not going to
teacher story.
disclose any names.
But if you're listening, kids, and we know you are,
All two of you.
I gave an assignment to my 5th graders this week. We were making compositions, a little musical composition assignment, and we're using Chrome Music Lab, which has all these colored. So I just say squares.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
I
We're back.
bumped the space bar.
Thank you,
Dang it.
James's elbow, for that technical difficulty.
Our studio's a
squares.
bit.
You left off on squares,
studio's a bit
Chrome
cramped.
Music or whatever.
Squares. So
Our studio's a little cramped.
they use these color coded notes, and there's treble and bass clef,
Yep.
and they can make their melodies and whatnot. And for my assignment, I said, okay, here's your requirements. You have to start with a C chord, you have to move to an F chord, you have to have a G chord. Then
Pretty standard.
you have to end on a C chord. Those are my requirements.
Return back to the yeah.
Everything else is fair game. So, because it's music, it's very subjective.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, they're doing this on their iPads. You can mess with it so that it looks like you can draw things.
Oh
Mhm.
sure.
So I get one assignment back. It starts with a C chord. Then it says Bully Maguire. Then we go to F chord, G chord is the best. Smiley face, C chord. And I'm like, you passed. You did all the
We
requirements.
live in the era where teachers and students consume the same memes.
Yeah, and I was just like, well, you followed all my requirements, so
And then a little
congratulations.
extra work put in there.
Uh,
That's pretty funny.
I died laughing. I was like,
When you're grading it.
you followed the assignment. Good job.
You did the thing.
Well done. Well done.
He trolled me, or memed me, or whatever.
Now you just
It's
need
okay.
to wait until one of your kids turns in straight up just Megalovania.
Wow. That'll be the day. I will give them.
Very, very much like from scratch too, not like they watched the video. on how
I
to
will
do it.
play that over the intercom.
Ooh.
Yes.
And you and your students will be the only people who know what it is.
Yes. Yes. And then the principal will be like, well, this is cool.
And it is cool.
It is cool.
Mr. Dalton, if you're listening, and we know you are, it could be any Mr. Dalton in the entire country.
You're right.
There
but
probably
he
are
might be
several
listening.
Daltons.
We didn't say what school you work at,
Okay.
which is at this address. Plus, this is stuff that's all available on the internet, so I don't really.
Yeah, if they looked you up and they'd find out where you work, probably.
Hmm.
You know.
And if the other listener doesn't know where you work, I'd be concerned about your relationship.
She knows. She definitely knows.
Yep.
She knows
She knows where you
where I live, where I work.
It was funny. My dad, he had a job where he had to travel a lot, and it was as we got older, he was talking about all these cool places he got to go. It's like, dang, Dad, if we didn't know better, we would say you'd be like a CIA agent or something. And he was like, well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. And there was just like a brief pause. We're all like, moving on. It was pretty funny.
That's the joke you make at a comment like that.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
is like classic.
But then my dad
Although,
just said it
coming
so.
from your dad, he's very dry and straightforward about
Yeah.
things.
It was just very matter of factly. And then we were all just like,
And he never tells a lie.
yeah.
I mean,
What?
if you
My dad? No. Although I will call him out for the eating raw marshmallows gives you worms thing.
What?
That was one of the things they said to get us not to eat the marshmallows when we,
before we
roasted them.
Or he'll get worms.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, it was not very effective. We just
You just ate them anyways.
Yeah.
Like, worms
Yeah,
aren't
we'll
fun.
deal with the worms.
and every time we made s'mores, part of the reason why I learned how to make my own s'mores was because there was the dad tax. Every time he'd roast us a s'more, he'd like squeeze it between the crackers and then bite off the excess marshmallow that squeezed out.
Uh-huh.
And that was the dad tax. So I'm like, okay, I want to eat the whole marshmallow. So I learned how to make my own s'mores.
Well, he was good at motivating you.
Yeah, that's one way of saying. That's one way of doing it.
He motivated you to study independently.
Yeah. I guess while we're on the topic of my dad, I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast before, but there was so Nathan and I after high school, we worked at a factory making
The plugs for float switches and stuff like that.
Yep.
And the circuit boards that go with them.
I didn't know this.
They control pumps and stuff. Like if you have a septic tank, right? You put this little floating switch device. So when the water gets to a certain level, it'll lift the float and connect the circuit and set off an alarm to drain the thing.
Yep.
Oh.
And then there's
So
circuit
it's like
boards.
the little thing in the toilet tower. Anyway, so I worked at this factory.
High-tech.
I worked at this factory, and when I started out, I worked night shift. So I'd work or evening shift or whatever. So I worked from 10 a.m. to midnight every
10
day.
a.m. to midnight?
Yeah, or let's see,
You
it was
worked
a
what?
10-hour shift.
Yeah, but it wasn't 10 o'clock a.m. to midnight.
No, that's when I got up in the morning. It was 11 to midnight, I believe.
11 a.m. to midnight? That's almost 12 hours.
I'm getting
That's
this
13
backwards.
hours.
Hold on. Well, there was like a little extra time. I was thinking because it was a half-hour drive, I had to factor in extra time for commuting. What was it? Okay, so
Subtract
no.
10 from midnight.
It was like 1:30 to 12:30.
There you go. That's a more
It
reasonable
was 1:30 to
time frame.
12:30, something like. Anyway, so I would work for. No, see, I'm getting the story wrong. This is after. Okay, I was working day shift at this point, so I had to be at work at like 6:30 or 6 o'clock every morning, as the case may be, and so I had to be up at like 5:45 every day. So Saturdays were my day to catch up on sleep, right? And so I was, and this was after I was out of high school. So one Saturday morning, it's like maybe 8:30. I'm just sleeping, and then just blasting Neil Diamond. It's Sweet Caroline.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Gross.
Sweet Caroline on a loop for
Oh,
like an hour. My dad remembered that Neil Diamond was a thing and just like set a video to play, and he forgot he had it on repeat. So I just heard this blasting from upstairs, Sweet Caroline, and I'm just like, well, I'm awake. I don't want to be, but I'm awake anyway. Thanks, Neil Diamond.
that was his way of welcoming you to adulthood.
Yeah, sometimes stuff just wakes you up.
I've
And
performed.
this he did use loud music to wake us up sometimes as teenagers. Usually like, I don't know, American Orchestra or something like that, or Josh Groban, which was surprisingly effective, and or Charlotte Church. She had quite the voice. That was a Christmas CD we had though.
Oh, sure.
But in this case, I think he just wanted to listen to Sweet Caroline and
Forgot.
on a loop or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's my funny dad story.
Bunny!
Funny dad story. See, my funny dad story that involves Sweet Caroline is the fact that he made me sing it several times. We as
Family band.
family
stuff.
band stuff, yeah. It's a very effective crowd pleaser. So and it's fun to perform.
Ba, ba, ba.
More fun to perform than it
Nope.
is to dance to. But then again, that's every song.
That is not allowed at my wedding.
Sweet Caroline.
Understandable.
Is Tyler DJing your wedding?
He is.
Then
I expect
don't
your
trust him to not.
expect your rules to be broken.
I know.
Uh,
I did say he can do the Pizza Hut dance or
the
whatever
chicken
you call
fried,
it.
Kentucky Fried Chicken
bread.
and Pizza Hut or whatever that song is.
He always has to do. Yes, I said it is loud, although Faith doesn't like it, but too bad.
Well, it's just you understand. There's no stopping him.
There's no stopping him. Just embrace it.
You can't.
Yeah.
There's no immovable object that could stop that force.
Yep. So yeah, wedding's coming up. That's gonna be fun. Where are you guys headed for your honeymoon?
That's
That was a weird way to
confidential.
phrase it. Okay, that was a weird way to emphasize it. Where are you guys headed for your honeymoon?
Our moon.
You're going to the moon.
We're going to somewhere in
Earth.
Minnesota.
Oh.
Oh yeah, skiing.
Yeah, that's all. The
Well, snowboarding.
listeners need to
You
know.
guys are snowboarding.
I don't want any fans jumping.
Yeah.
And
You
You
joining
don't want
us.
any groupies trying to join.
Undisclosed Minnesota snowboard location. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't need other people, other listeners crashing these listeners' getaway.
No, just the two.
Yeah.
But no, it's and
That'll be
honestly,
fun.
if you're gonna do a winter wedding, that's the kind of getaway you do, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should be a good time.
Yeah,
Being
Should
married
be.
and stuff.
Yeah.
sounds good. Sounds really nice.
I'm just hoping.
Oh, I was
Mike-
gonna say, John, can I meet my wife at your wedding? My future wife at your wedding?
Sure. You're
Like, not
allowed.
you've got yours covered already, but
You're allowed to.
okay, cool,
Neat.
I give you permission, I suppose.
cool. I could use that.
I'm just
See,
hoping the.
My brother met his future wife at a wedding. pretty
True.
much.
True.
Because funny story. Before
Thanks to Simon.
before she went out with Andrew, she was Simon's date to my sister's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
He was young enough that he needed
was like
a nanny.
3 and a
and
half.
Mom was busy. Yeah, he was. That was like short, like the summer after we met you, pretty much.
Yep.
I
So
was
like
like,
nine.
hey, this girl's nice. Let's drag her along to to take care of Simon. She was like, okay, I could do that.
Mm-hmm. I think there was more than one reason why your parents requested Michelle specifically.
Dad said several times that he went to Andrew and was like, if you don't leave here with her number, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
he left there without her number, but
I know.
It worked out in the end.
Well, he's crazy.
He is crazy.
And they're married.
They're
With a baby.
Crazy
With
and
baby.
married.
Baby.
They're married with a baby?
Yeah.
They are married,
Whoa.
and they are.
They
with
have
a
baby.
Whose baby?
I have a picture of their baby on my phone I received
I have-
today.
You should audibly show it to the audience.
I'm audibly showing John a picture of my goddaughter.
And our mutual niece,
Yes.
Yes.
because it's his brother-in-law and my
But it's-
sister-in-law that have it.
I was like,
His
it's crazy. She's
goddaughter.
almost a
It's
month.
his goddaughter. I'll give him that. I take pride in my godchildren too.
Our
I got
family-
3 of them. They're great.
Our family group chat is
Don't have any.
a hoot because I sent a text. I was like,
I'll
oh
probably
wow.
have my own child before I have a godchild,
Possibly.
honestly.
They're audibly showing John a picture of baby.
Wow, that is an audible baby.
Yep, audible baby. She is very audible at this age.
She's actually got.
I was like, I put in the family group chat, wow, she's almost a month old. And then, of course, my brother Ryan pipes in, well, I'm like 500 something months old. And then it just became a contest of
It
people
became a
saying how many
math
months
contest?
old they were. Of course, Dad had all of us beat, of course,
Oh, of course
being
he did.
Dad. But
I would hope.
yeah.
So, I'm 2 months old.
So if you think I go off on wild tangents, just imagine
He gets it from somewhere.
Yeah, just imagine my whole family in one place with alcohol occasionally.
If you think
I think
have
I
a
want
dumb
to
sense of
leave.
humor, you should see where I come from.
Man, it takes so. We'll get to the podcast eventually. We eventually over the holidays got through a card game, which ordinarily takes maybe an hour, but it took us like 3 because we were just constantly like ripping on each other and jokes and trying to physically stop my mom from playing solitaire between hands while we were playing a different card game. People kept getting up to go to the bathroom and grabbing food and drinks and stuff. It was just chaos.
Sounds
but then,
like some friends of mine.
yeah, it was funny though because when it was a couple weekends ago, it was just me, my brother, and his wife, and she's my sister-in-law is kind of a card shark. We got through that game in like 40 minutes. We just cranked right through it.
Nice.
So I was like, see, this is what can happen when we're not like slightly intoxicated and okay, not
Focused.
intoxicated. We're good Catholics, but drunk on each other's company, we'll say.
Out-toxicated.
Anyway,
You guys
well,
are a competitive family to begin with.
speaking on drunk on each, well, particularly my mom when she plays games.
It's funny. I was talking to my mom, and she was that since they're both grandparents of the same child.
Yep.
Your mom has a bit of a rivalry with my mom, who's like, "Yeah, you
It was,
go, girl."
it was bound. It was bound to happen. Like over the weekend of the baptism, my mom went with your mom to go see them, like right after baby was
Yep.
born, pretty much, and they got to hold her early, like early access baby.
Who
Oh, yeah.
got to hold her
Um,
first?
And so over the baptism weekend, all the aunts and uncles are holding the baby, and my mom was just sitting in a corner pouting about it. And I was like, "Mom, you got to hold her before any of the rest of us did. I don't feel sorry for you at all." I was a goddaughter or a godfather. She's my goddaughter. I only got to hold her for like, I don't know, 20 minutes the whole weekend.
It was
But
great when Noah got to hold her. He was
Oh,
so curious about her all week. Oh, so good. Anyway,
speaking of holding things, we're holding up the podcast. We're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
I'm John.
This is
Today we're getting super serial about the animated Clone Wars show.
Mm-hmm.
One day, 3 lads from North Dakota were bitten by a radioactive television, and with their powers combined, they are Super Cereal!
Bum
We-
ba da bum.
Anyway, we're returning to that galaxy far, far away that
Yep.
we all know and love so much.
We're going to be focusing on the 3D animated series.
There was that series of 2D animated shorts. And those are cool, but they don't like.
There
Well,
wasn't
they're
much
not- they're
dialogue.
They're animated by the guy who did the Samurai Jack cartoons.
The 3D
So-
animated show is kind of very inspired by that art style and that direction he went, though. So
Mm-hmm.
it even reuses a couple of the characters. Never uses that like one guy who has like regrowing muscle tissue.
What?
That and you didn't watch the
I haven't.
I was
no.
when I was sick. I just binged
Well,
as much Star Wars.
John
stuff.
was watching it while I was working from home with COVID, so I didn't really
Indeed.
I didn't see
What was
very
it,
much.
Dirge? Is the guy that they cut his arms off and his arms grew back with the muscle tissue?
I don't know. I
No,
don't
we're-
remember
we're-
that part.
Moving
Okay.
on. So the
Moving on.
So Star Wars: The Clone Wars is a 3D animated series that ran from roughly 2008 to
Well,
the-
then it got cut off when Disney bought the thing, and then they brought
Dang
it
it,
back for a
Disney.
season on Netflix, and then they didn't, and then they brought it back for the final season on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So it was choppy off and on for a bit.
because of the whole transfer of power thing.
The entire show takes place between episodes 2 and 3. So when the Clone Wars start at the end of Attack of the Clones, and when they end in Revenge of the Sith, there's that kind of gap between there.
Yep.
It's like a couple of years long. We don't really know what happened aside from Anakin being a Jedi and Obi-Wan not being his master. technically.
They're generals in the Grand Army of the Republic, as well as Jedi, who are fighting against the Separatists throughout the galaxy, trying to.
It's all a ploy.
It's all a ploy by the Chancellor Palpatine to destroy the Jedi and take over the galaxy for himself.
We're not
So,
gonna
obvious-
end up doing a typical series story recap because
Right.
let's be real, it's 7 seasons with
It's
several
so
micro arcs
much
that are very episodic.
filler.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of filler.
And the other thing too is that the plot isn't really the important thing with this series. It's more about
the-
characters.
More about the characters.
Yeah.
and
This
the
show,
world.
this show is about the friends they made along the way.
It really
Pretty much.
is.
The real Clone Wars.
were the
The
friends they
show
made along the way.
is character development. The show.
Right. I feel like really the first episode that I watched that really made me realize, oh, this show could be actually really interesting was in season 2 when there was that episode where Rex got stranded on that planet and he met a deserter clone who got married and had kids. It was like,
Oh yeah.
you ever think there could be a life outside of the army? And he's like, no, I wasn't.
Or
programmed
follow
for
orders, and he's like, "But what if you had the choice?"
Like, good soldiers follow orders.
I guess we could talk about some of the characters that they introduced that are kind
Well,
of unique to the
The
show.
most prominent one is Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan.
Yep.
And I think the interesting thing about her is going into the show, I've watched a couple behind the scenes interviews and stuff where it's like Dave Filoni knew that the showrunner knew that injecting a new character into an established cast is kind of a risky move and can
Yep.
very easily not work.
And
I
it didn't-
didn't like her when the first movie came out. I was like,
And here's the thing: he knew you wouldn't like her anyway, and so he gave her character traits that were kind of obnoxious and unlikable, so that he could smooth her out over time, and people could acclimate to her at the same rate she became a good character.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, that's clever. You didn't just put a perfect character in the show and say, hey, everybody loves and respects you, and you're super powerful. You're not. In short, Ahsoka isn't Rey.
Which is a mistake Star Wars totally never made. But yeah,
No,
you have
no.
Ahsoka Tano,
Disney.
and there's kind of a cast. There's a bunch of
There's a bunch
clones,
of clones. Commander Rex, chief
being the
among
most
them.
prominent, and then you have his squad with fives and heavy and all and tough.
It kind
and-
of does rotate a little bit because they're not afraid to kill clones, even the established name ones.
Mhm.
In fact,
It is a
especially
brutal
the
war
established
after all.
name ones. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things I really kind of like about this show in general is how it humanizes the clones.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the movies, they're just kind of cannon fodder that happens,
Yeah.
and then they just do Order 66.
Yep.
But in this show, it develops them as no, these are human beings.
Yeah.
They are people with individual dignities that are just enslaved into this.
But and yet they are
Republic.
bred to the point where they actively choose to be enthusiastically patriotic and
For the
fighting
most
the
part.
war, sacrificing themselves.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
you have
also
a
they
rogue
have
clone
they're
here and there.
deviously programmed with a secret microchip that makes them go follow
great.
orders
Well,
without question after Order 66.
I think we can do a sort of a 1,000-foot or 10,000-foot view summary of the show. So we start out with
the early seasons
well,
are just kind of episodic
Hang
stuff.
on, hang on. Man.
yeah, John's the guest.
John,
let him say
John.
something.
I'm the guest. Let me
Go ahead.
speak.
Say
Well,
your piece.
I didn't know who was leading this, but I was thinking since this show is mostly, I would say, about Ahsoka, we could just do a summary of Ahsoka's story, and then we
Yeah.
can talk about the cooler subplots.
Yeah,
sure.
because
Starts out she's spunky, she's young, she's energetic. She's like, I'm gonna be the best Padawan there ever is. And Anakin's like, hold on, I'm not qualified to teach somebody.
Well, he
I'm
was-
barely qualified to be a knight.
She was kind of foisted on him by the Jedi Council because they're like, maybe this will
Maybe
help him.
maybe this will mellow him out a little bit. It did not, by the
No,
way.
no. In fact, he kind of rubbed his personality kind of rubbed off on her in some ways.
Indeed.
But they kind of grow sort of a big brother little sister relationship over the course of the show.
Which is kind of the way that Anakin and Obi-Wan had a big brother, little brother kind of relationship too.
And then extended from Obi-Wan to Ahsoka as well. Although he's
Right, where he's like the uncle that reprimands.
he's like,
Anakin. It's
she's acting like you, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
I get stuff done at what cost?
That's kind of their dynamic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you start off the show. You know, they're going about the galaxy doing things, and then
I think one of the defining early episodes for Ahsoka is that one where
The movie?
where is the one where she loses her lightsaber and has to get it back, but she doesn't want to tell Anakin that she lost it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she goes and tells the old Jedi in the library, and there's just this really
Teaches her
ancient old
the-
master guy, and he's like, he's like old and slow, and it's like, patience, child. We need to learn patience. And she's all overeager and young and feisty, and he's like, patience. And so over the course of the show, she kind of learns to mellow out and see things from a wider perspective, and that episode was kind of a turning point for her. I feel like
yeah.
there were a couple other little turning points later on.
There were some where she there's sort of like Trandoshans, like lizard people, like kidnap her and a bunch of Padawans and hunt them for sport, and then she kind of gets all the Padawans together, who at this point have kind of lost faith in Jedi Order, and she still has faith in everything, and so she rallies them so they all fight together to escape.
With a young Chewbacca who was kind of shoehorned in there too.
Yeah.
Right.
But the seeds were kind of planted in her that maybe she needs to think more for herself.
Instead of just listening to Anakin, who
Yep.
was at this point a little bit restrictive and slightly controlling, you know. But he learned, and then eventually, like season 6, I think is the
She's
last.
framed for a crime by another Padawan for murdering a Jedi, I believe.
Yes.
so,
I actually watched the final episode of that tonight so that I could be fresh on it.
Oh, for that one in particular.
Yeah.
So why don't you go over that arc for us? a
Sure.
little
That
bit?
was an important turning point for her.
So, Ahsoka was, there was actually, I should go back further. There was a bombing at the Jedi Temple in one of the hangars, and a lot of innocent workers that worked for the Jedi died in this attack. And there's, what was it?
Barriss Sophie is the name of the
Varys.
Yes,
Yes.
who is Luminara's
Padawan.
Padawan, yes.
They're the two green ladies. With the
They've
face
worked together
tattoos.
before on some missions and different things, so they're kind of friends, and she trusts her.
Right, and they're trying to investigate this. They end up they get a lead on one person who was one of the victims, and they realize that he was actually one of the victims that they're trying to find was actually the bomb, and the bomb was like inside him because of microbots or whatever. And so he had consumed the bomb, and so they find his wife, and they go to her place and try to figure out what do you know about this, and she's trying to say, well, I didn't know that this happened. And they investigate her place. They find the microbots in her apartment, and they find out that she was the one who fed them to her husband, not by choice, but she was forced to do it by threat of another force out there.
Isn't this the one where Ahsoka teams up with Ventress?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
eventually, because
Eventually.
every time they come across a witness that like dies or is unable to testify, and so gradually the Jedi Order and the Republic start to view Ahsoka as a suspect to the point where she gets arrested.
Yes.
And I think one of the key witnesses is murdered, like by force choking. And so
Yes, so they're the wife of the guy who was the bomb. So they were in a detention center, and Ahsoka was interrogating her, and all of a sudden she starts getting force choked, and Ahsoka doesn't know what's going on, and then she dies.
And all the guards
Not
assumed that
Ahsoka.
she did it because she was the only Jedi in the
You're
room.
right, and so there was no other force wielder in the area, and so they're like, Ahsoka, why did you kill her?
And she's like,
then
I didn't.
She got framed, and then someone ran as she was trying to escape the prison. All the guards, as she's running through, are knocked out or killed by someone, and it appears that she's the one who did it.
Mm-hmm.
But through like some trials and tribulations and unlikely team ups and stuff, she discovers the true culprit was who was Barra Sophie, who she thought was her friend.
Was kind of seduced to the dark side and had enough of the Republic and all that.
And was very
But
I don't know if she was seduced to the dark side.
I think she was just very
Rebellious.
put out by the Jedi Order in general and how they had kind of fallen from grace.
And that was kind of uncovered
Yes.
because Anakin, it never sat right with him that his Padawan got put up to this, and so he manages by some sleuthing and forcefulness on his own, if you forgive the pun, that he discovers Barriss was the perpetrator. But the Jedi Council and the Republic were convinced to the point of basically convicting Ahsoka. And so even when she's cleared, she sort of becomes disillusioned with the Jedi Order because they basically left her on her own.
Left her out to
Left her
dry
behind.
without believing anything she said, just because I would also having a culprit would help clear the Jedi as an organization for in front of the people, and the people are not too pleased with the Jedi Order and the way they're handling the war and stuff. So it's politically a very charged time for the Jedi. So they had to make tough decisions, kind of rashly.
Yep. So she abandons the Jedi Order. Well, she sets it aside.
Yeah,
Leaves.
much to the chagrin of Anakin, who
Who's kind of hurt by it.
very hurt by it, but also at the same time
Understands.
similarly disillusioned with the Jedi Order, which makes some of the actions he takes in Episode 3 slightly more believable. I think it's one of actually the best things about this show. It really shows the slow transition of Anakin from a well-meaning kid to someone who
'Cause he starts
could
off
become Darth Vader.
Being braggadocious and rash and making, decisions that ultimately end up working out in the end, but kind of cause trouble to the point where he's like kind of operating in moral gray areas. Like, I think he force chokes
He
a
does
few
that
people.
He
more
does.
and more frequently throughout the series too.
One of my favorite early examples of this is during the first Mandalore arc.
Yeah.
When Obi-Wan goes there and meets the Duchess Satine again.
Let's talk about Obi-Wan, because I think this show does a really good job of developing his character as well, because he's in all the movies up till Episode 4, but this show really kind of gives him more to do. Like his character, I don't think
it's pretty,
he doesn't
it's
change.
mostly
He's
static. It's just he gets more firm in his resolve in the Jedi and stuff.
and you see a newer side of him and he grows in wisdom and stuff over the course of the show. Like with the Mandalore arc, for example, it was revealed that he and Qui-Gon at one point were assigned to protect the
Duchess Satine,
who's the ruler of Mandalore.
who is
and they had
Mandalore
sort of
is decided to remain neutral in the whole Clone
Clone
War,
War.
much to the chagrin of the traditionalist Death Watch group, who are like, no, Mandalorians are warriors, and we hate the Jedi, and
Mandalore,
that.
for those who don't know at this point, like see the
It's-
Mandalorian or Boba Fett, that style of armor. This is the planet from which that originates. A race of humans that split themselves off from the Republic centuries ago to form their own society and had wars with the Jedi in the past, but they're part of the Republic now, but they're trying to remain neutral and
yeah.
all this stuff. There's all
It's the
kinds
whole
of
thing.
tensions going on. So it was revealed, though, that Obi-Wan and Satine
Had a thing.
fell in love. They had a thing, but then he decided to remain faithful to the Jedi Order. Although if she had asked, he would have left it for her. But so that's kind of one of the main arcs that keeps reoccurring in the series.
Yeah, Mandalore develops over the course, and we'll talk more about Mandalore. But the point I wanted to make about Anakin earlier was there was part when they were flying in their ship to go to Coruscant to make their case, and there was an assassin on board still trying to kill Duchess Satine. And when he's revealed, he kidnaps Duchess
As-
Satine and runs to the front of the ship as it's about to blow up or whatever, and
He's
Obi-Wan
gonna-
chases.
He's got a detonator. He's going to blow up the ship.
Right. And it ends up with kind of a Mexican standoff with Obi-Wan. Duchess Satine has a gun, and he is there, and he's like, well, if the Duchess shoots me, she'll nullify her vow of pacifism, and if you kill me, you'll look bad in front of your girlfriend here, and you'll also kind of betray what the Jedi Order is all about. So which one of you is going to strike and be labeled the cold-blooded murderer? Up comes Anakin from behind, stabbing him.
Yep.
Me.
He's-
With a light hint of Darth Vader's theme in the background of the
yeah.
music.
And Obi-Wan is just kind of like Anakin. He's like, what? He was going to blow up the ship. He's
Yeah.
like, so he was justified, but it was
But it was still like, okay, this is slowly becoming Darth Vader.
another.
Oh, the other
big-
great arc involving Obi-Wan is Darth Maul.
Darth Maul comes back.
Yeah.
The Sith Lord from Episode 1 was too cool to die from being chopped in half and dropped down a pit.
So mumbo jumbo witches stuff. He's still alive.
Yes, because he is from Dathomir,
Well,
a planet where the men and women are segregated. The women are witches and the men are warriors, sort of thing. And
And the witches kind of rule the planet.
right, and all the men kind of see themselves as brothers, and so one of the Knight brothers is made Count Dooku's like assassin bodyguard for a bit, but then he breaks off and goes to look for
They
Maul.
basically ditch Asajj Ventress, and she goes off doing her own thing after they try to kill her.
Ventress also being one
I
of the
feel like
witches.
we've talked about Ventress twice now, and I haven't actually talked about who she is.
She was
A Night Sister who was basically given to
Count
Count
Dooku
Dooku
as
a
an assassin, air quotes, but he sees her more of as an apprentice to be the next person to kill Palpatine and make the rule of two continue.
But Palpatine gets wise to this and is like, all right, well, you got to kill her because we can't have that happen. I've got my plan. Can't have you making your plan. And at that point, it's sort of implied he's resolved to kind of off Count Dooku and replace him at some point. But at any rate, so Dooku's like, well, I need a new assassin. So here's this Savage Opress guy who Ventress is trying to use to kill me, but that doesn't work. And so he's like, well, I'm going to go off on my own quest and find my brother who the Great Witch Lady says is still alive. So he finds Darth Maul and
In
gets him
some hole in some planet with robot spider legs.
gets him healed, and now he's hell bent on revenge on Obi-Wan Kenobi, who put him through these years of suffering.
Right.
So there's a few different arcs where Darth Maul comes to play.
There's a point at which he actually takes over Mandalore and is like king of Mandalore for a bit. But
And
then once
kills
he's kicked
Satine.
out, yep, he kills Satine, and her what cousin, Lady Bo-Katan,
Yeah.
Yep.
is all who becomes
Sister.
It's her sister.
Yep.
Sister.
Okay, it is her sister.
Yep.
I was like, what? They were yeah. Anyway, she shows up later in Mandalorian, but he makes an enemy of her. She was part of the Death Watch, but then the Death Watch was like, let's change course.
And
now
he,
that,
he kills Satine to get at Obi-Wan,
yes,
who
of course,
is-
to
who
provoke
watches-
him and call him out.
who is held captive and watches on helplessly. And so, yeah, revenge is best served cold, I guess.
And then from Mandalore, I think he actually starts getting involved in the crime underworld of
Because he's sort of fallen from grace as like the great apprentice of the greatest Sith Lord in the
right.
galaxy.
He no longer sees himself as a Sith. He's just Maul, no Darth.
He's just doing his own thing. But he has dreams of overthrowing Palpatine and with his brother Savage as apprentice, and doing his own thing and tries to build his own empire. But then Palpatine shows up and wipes the floor with him and is like, it's like you're my. I'm not going to say it on the podcast because we already did the one swear counter. But
But from that inference, you probably know what he wants.
yeah, it kills Savage and basically knocks Darth Maul down a peg. And so in the 7th season that comes out, Ahsoka comes back to help take down Maul on Mandalore.
in
with
like the
some of
last 4 episodes, and it's all actually runs concurrently to episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be like times when they start a call with Yoda, and you'll see the end of a conversation from Star Wars 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then he'll turn right into, "Oh, Ahsoka, thank you for reporting in. What'd you know about Darth Maul?"
Yep.
Yeah, I did kind of like how they put that in. Like they put in bits of episode 3 in there.
And they also cleverly managed to write out characters like Rex and Ahsoka and Maul from the entire equation, even though they are present and active during that period of the time.
Yeah, that was. Well, I mean, this is all taking place during this final season. Very emotionally investing, or well, for me
Yes.
Yeah.
and for most viewers, I would suppose.
Dude, the last season I think was like one of the best.
Because it was brought back basically at the request of the fans. Because when Disney bought Star Wars, the production on the show was almost complete for the final season, and so eventually, after the sequel trilogy kind of bombed, Disney brought it back as sort of a peace offering to the fans, more or less. Which they changed up a little bit. There's a few episodes that were basically like the pilot for the Bad Batch episode, which is also, or the Bad Batch series rather, which is
basically season 8 of
really
Clone
good.
Wars, let's be real. It's
But
Yeah.
if we rewind a little bit, I think one of the most important pieces of the Clone Wars, as far as Star Wars canon is concerned, is basically how the clones came to betray the Jedi.
oh yeah.
So it's revealed that the whole reason why Count Dooku and Palpatine set up the clone army in secret was to implant these inhibitor chips which controlled the clones' thoughts, more or less, and made them docile, but also were programmed once the Order 66 was issued, they would against their wills have to kill Jedi.
Yep.
I think there was earlier, like a season earlier in the show, there was one guy whose ship
Was defective.
was defective and damaged, and he killed his officer during a battle. And we're
Good
like,
soldiers
what
follow-
the heck, dude?
Good soldiers follow orders like he's in a trance.
Right.
And so his buddy Fives, one of the clone troopers, tries to investigate what happened here. He's basically being gaslighted and told to shut up by everybody he brings it to. And he starts feeling like he goes crazy, but he discovers the inhibitor chips and tries to tell his friends about it, but ends up getting killed before he can reveal
everybody.
the secret and prevent episode 3 from happening.
But during
Right.
like the final events of the final season, I think, doesn't Rex remember that there were chips or something?
Yeah.
And they actually get Rex's removed.
Yep.
Yep.
And he and Ahsoka escaped from a ship together, and Darth Maul, who they'd captured and overthrown Mandalore to get at,
And managed to get away somehow.
Yep.
Slink into a hole somewhere to show up in the Rebels.
So as far as the Empire after the events of it's kind of concurrent with episode 3. But as far as Darth Vader, aka Anakin, and the Empire knows, Ahsoka and Rex are dead, but they're not.
Yeah.
So they can come back in Rebels later, but we're not talking about that. So those, I think, are the two most important pieces for the Star Wars
we did a
canon
couple of the
out of the
highlights.
show.
This was initially intended to be a kids show, so there are a
Yeah.
lot of like fillery, just episodic Monster of the Week episodes.
Yeah.
There's even like, just the Adventures of R2D2 and C3PO one day, and then
Yeah.
I skipped those.
and a couple
Well,
of just
there's the one we watched where it was R2D2 basically overthrows like 4 civilizations
Right.
in one day.
and they even have like a couple of Jar Jar Binks focused episodes. So it's like, yeah, this is kind of a kids show, but then there are times where it's very not a kids show.
There
Like,
was Clone
the
Wars
whole-
Vietnam.
There was with what was that?
The
Oh,
Umbarans.
the four-armed guy.
four-armed guy.
Yes.
General
Same-
Krell.
General Krell, same species as Dexter, the diner guy.
I think
Yeah.
I think that's worth talking about, that arc.
Yeah, because
That one was scary.
So
Why?
basically, for reasons, Anakin isn't allowed to command his 501st Legion, which has Rex and all these
he's
guys.
busy elsewhere, but they need
Yeah.
more people.
So he's placed
Rex
under the
goes.
command of this other Jedi who has the highest casualty count of any general in the war.
But he's won every battle.
And there's this they're invading this dark, ethereal, humanoid race that is like an ally of the Separatists. So they're not really fighting. They're not fighting droids. They're fighting like human
Other people.
Yeah,
Other sentient beings.
yeah,
So that adds another layer of uncomfortable to it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
'cause
there's
they're so
really
used
high
to fighting
casualties. The
robots.
clones are like, "What is this guy's deal?"
He keeps just throwing us at them, even though we're just dying.
And being basically a terrible leader and ordering them around and not really being sympathetic at all, to the point where it becomes clear that he has it out for the clones and is trying to get them killed, to the point where he has them turn on each other on accident. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, the enemy has clone uniforms and they're going to fight you. And so at that point, they're like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this guy.
Yeah.
So
and
they
then-
basically have a mutiny and
Yep.
capture him. And he's like, yep, I want to join the dark side. And he's sort of caught wind of the Emperor's plan and he wants to be part of it.
He wants to be on the winning team.
Yep.
It's the best strategy.
Survival of the fittest.
So the clones discovers treason and execute him, and it's a very morally heavy arc.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't think they were actually going to do it, and then
They went there.
they just went there. They just shot him, and like, oh,
And I love when this show goes there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Because it's like, oh, this is just Star Wars then.
Yep.
It's not trying to pander and be a kid's show. It's just being good Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Probably my favorite, one of my favorite arcs.
yeah.
That was pretty darn cool. What season was that? 4?
Something like that.
I think
4 or 5.
4 or 5. I think season 4 is when it starts to really get good with the more intense arcs and the more interesting stories and characterizations.
Seasons 5, 6, and 7 are definitely the best.
Yeah. So are we moving on to? Is this basically cool stuff, or are we-
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing has been cool
Okay.
stuff pretty much. It's just what is there to recap except for the entire show?
Yeah, which
Right.
is
So we just
difficult.
covered
There's a
some
lot of stuff that doesn't matter.
So basically, each of the arcs is a thing we think is cool stuff.
Let's go over the main characters maybe and see how they progress throughout the
Yeah.
show. So we talked about Ahsoka, kind of
Yep.
her
Kind
journey.
of touched on Anakin a bit.
Yep, and there's Obi-Wan. He kind of has his he's faithful to the Jedi Order and being a wise Jedi, and he has that challenge a few times
I think it's
to the point where he experiences personal loss, but ultimately he overcomes these trials and becomes a better Jedi for it.
I think it's interesting. We don't get like a whole lot of episodes focused on Mace Windu and Yoda, but
Uh-huh.
seeing them like in the background, like this is a bad decision, but we have to make it.
Mm-hmm.
They feel the Jedi Council feels very backed into a corner by the dark side,
Yep.
where it's like we have to choose the lesser of two evils. We don't want to choose an evil. We have to choose the lesser of the two.
Yep.
And Yoda just gets more and more perturbed as the show goes on.
Yep.
He does go like listen to the spirit of
Sifo Dyas.
Qui-Gon Jinn
Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah.
to go learn the secrets of Force ghosting.
Yep.
So those were interesting episodes.
I thought those at first I was not sure about them, but then I was like, okay, they did talk about this in episode 3, like, well, how he learned, like in episode 3, Yoda says a friend has learned
emerged in the Force and
has learned to
speak
return
after
from the Force, and yeah, so that's what that's all about.
that was that arc. It was explaining that little throwaway thing. It's like, oh, neat.
I think Captain Rex is like the final like main character of the story, I would say.
Yeah.
Because he's defined, by being a good soldier, being a good leader, and very faithful follower to the Jedi.
But also, his main theme, I think, is loyalty.
Yep.
Loyalty to the Jedi, loyalty to his men, loyalty to the
Republic.
Republic. But ultimately, the difference between those loyalties, those loyalties start to pull different directions the further into the show you get.
Yep.
Where listening to the Jedi, listening to the Republic, listening to his men, they kind of start to have this tension within him where he's like, who do I really trust?
Yep.
Who am I truly loyal to?
And he's truly loyal to the people he's closest with.
And in the end, he chooses, I'm loyal to my brothers, I'm loyal to my commanders.
And my
My commanders that haven't gone to the dark side.
Yeah, and the ones
Right.
that aren't dead.
Right, poor Rex.
Whereas, like, I can forsake the...
Contrast
my-
him with Cody, who has no issues with, serving Obi-Wan faithfully for years and then just trying to murk him.
Right,
Right.
poor Cody.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought of that. Like, I mean, you watch the main prequel trilogy by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes sense by itself, and you just like, okay, this is all happening.
The clones are just kind of there.
The
just-
clones are just they're just clones,
They're just prototype stormtroopers.
right? And I mean, watching, I was like, they're just mindless clones.
They're
who
drones.
They're drones. They're
They might as well be droids.
they're organic droids is basically what they are, and so it made sense that they just was like
From the
they were
get-
listening to
From the
Sidious
get-go,
the whole time.
the show makes a point of humanizing the clones. Like I think it's like the first episode.
Where
of-
Yeah.
Yoda is like, you all have different strengths and weaknesses. Let's combine them. Let's
Yep.
outsmart these guys even though we're outnumbered.
right.
And so the clones
judge
in this
me by my
series are
size?
voiced by D. Bradley Baker from Appa fame and other shows. He's been a voice actor on a ton of shows. But
He's like one of the 3
grunting.
voice actors in Bad Batch.
yeah,
He plays every character in that
Yeah.
show.
Right.
So, but But they do a really good job of, even though they all have like the same voice.
They all
and
have the same
characteristics.
voice and the same accent, but he characterizes them so
Because
differently.
even though they're all clones and technically like genetically identical, they each kind of have their own personalities.
And
Because
they all like take every step they can to show it. They paint their armor, they get tattoos, they change their hairstyles. You can tell them apart when they
There's
change
one
their
with a
hairstyle.
man bun.
oh yeah,
I
All
was like,
kinds
how
of-
do you put your helmet on?
all kinds of
Well, they
bad
got the
hair.
little fin on the back. The man
It goes
just
in the
right into that
fin.
little fin.
all kinds of bad hair, but yeah, they kind of have their own individual identity, and even in real life, if you have like identical twins, they are slightly different from each other.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, they're all
So they're
each
genetically
individual
the same.
persons.
They just and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses and headspaces they're in, and it's
Yeah, the show does a very good job of making you really like the clones to the point where where the tragedy of Order 66 is almost doubled by the end of the show, where it's just
right.
like
So when
where
you see these,
you
people
hope for
who
like
are-
a minute like they can change the course of history and like prevent Order 66, but when it happens it's even more tragic.
And then in the last episodes with Ahsoka, when you see this platoon of soldiers who painted their faces the way that Ahsoka's head patterns were to show their solidarity with her and going on her mission,
Yeah.
and welcoming her back to the 501st, they turn on her and try to kill her,
yep.
Rex
Except
included.
for Rex.
And they're doing everything
Well,
they can to not have to kill them to like get away.
But good soldiers follow orders. Mm-hmm. And that's really all I can think and say in that moment because it's how they're programmed.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah, and then they crash on an ice planet, and she buries them all.
Yeah. The other thing, or the main thing I think the Clone Wars series does well, is it makes the transition from the Republic to the Empire very natural.
Right.
It doesn't really leave any questions unanswered. Like you
even see
get to
Governor
see
Tarkin.
Anakin as a good guy for a long time.
I love the episode where they go into the prison and save Governor Tarkin. And so you see Tarkin and Anakin
You mean
have this kind of
Admiral?
immediate connection and rapport
Yep.
with each other.
As the show gets later and later, you start to see little hints of the Empire start to pop up.
Like some characters who show up in sequel trilogy is much older and much meaner or more rebellious, whichever one it is.
Isn't Tarkin a commander? He's not a
He's
governor.
not a governor yet. He's a commander, yeah.
Yep.
Something like that. But
Early in his career.
he's Grand Moff Tarkin before he got promoted to Grand Moff, whatever that made up
Whatever that means.
rank means.
Yep.
Yeah. I was
Actually, he's the I think he's Ahsoka's prosecutor in her arc.
Oh, he is, isn't he?
Because he's like, the Jedi are messing up this war. I think we need to move past them
I
if the
think we need to
Republic
move
is going
past
to
the
survive.
Jedi.
Yeah.
And which very much is in line with his sentiments in Episode 4 when he's like, the Jedi are gone and their religion is dead. You're all that remains, Darth Vader. So-
Yeah. I wanted to touch a little bit more on like Anakin and Ahsoka
yeah.
Yeah,
in their arc, not necessarily their arc, but their character development.
And their relationship.
When I first, I remember when the Clone Wars movie came out.
Mhm, the one
Which
where-
was basically
2008.
the pilot for the
it
show.
was
Wait,
the first two
right.
episodes combined together into a thing.
And I was like, wait, Anakin gets a Padawan?
What?
No, that he doesn't have a Padawan. What happened to her in episode 3?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is dumb. And like what you said before, you're supposed to hate her. It's just like he doesn't have a Padawan.
And she's totally.
But by the end of the show, she's like a fan favorite.
oh,
Right.
She's like one of the best developed characters in all of Star Wars
Yeah.
at that point.
But I didn't want to accept her as canon right away, but then as I watched the show, the more and more I liked her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, she's a good character, and like I don't know, she
She ha-
fits in.
They started her with a place to grow from, and they grew her from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also,
And Anakin, in being her master, also grows himself.
right, because he learns as much from having to teach somebody as she learns from being taught.
Yep.
Yeah. I do like I think
They give Padme things to do in the show, too.
I
And
think
also
they
they
give her
kind of-
too many things to do.
Yeah, I
in the
agree.
show.
But
But also, I think they kind of make the relationship between Anakin and Padme more believable than they do in the movies.
yeah.
That I agree with.
And to the point where it's implied that Rex, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan even know about them.
But they're not saying anything.
Which makes sense in episode 3 when Obi-Wan is like, Anakin's the baby's father, isn't he? It's like,
Right.
oh yeah, because he's sort of picked up on Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like to do comparisons between the Clone Wars Anakin and the movies Anakin.
Yep.
Because they are. I think they're very not too different, but they are different. I mean, voice actor, obviously.
Yep.
But they're kind of different takes in the same idea.
Hayden Christensen's, he's the original Anakin, obviously, but I always thought
The writing and
when I was
direction-
writing, especially when I was watching episode 3, I thought that Hayden Christensen did a really good job of sounding like Darth Vader before the mask.
Sure.
Like the way he talked, the way his mannerisms were, I thought he evolved Anakin into Darth Vader before the mask.
Mm-hmm.
And like I could hear the things that he was saying in episode 3, like through his
You filtered them in through a
Darth Vader
James Earl Jones voice in your
voice
head.
changer, and I was like, yeah, I could hear him saying that, and I think he did a really good job. I can't quite imagine the Clone Wars TV show Anakin as Darth Vader,
Sure.
because he's just character-wise, he's a lot nicer and he's a lot more relatable. Like in the especially episode 2, Anakin he's a creep.
He's a creep and a dork.
And it's like, ugh, why are you touching her like that? I
And
know
why
you
is
don't
she
like
into
sand.
it?
Yeah, why is
Well,
she
no,
into you
well,
touching her? Because you don't
Why-
like sand.
It's like he confesses that he massacred an entire village
And
of
she's just
sentient beings,
okay
and
with
she's
that.
like, "Oh, that's hot."
have my children.
Right.
But I do say though, like I prefer the Clone Wars Anakin, honestly.
I do
but,
too.
It's because he's not written by George Lucas. Let's be real.
Yeah, yeah. But and it kind of makes you feel more like the tragedy of the clones, also the tragedy of Anakin as a character.
Because he was such a good friend to Obi-Wan. You see that in this
There-
show. It's
yeah,
not
there
just
was-
told to you by the characters in episode 2 and 3. It's shown through their relationship.
There was an analysis video I was watching where they were talking about how that little blurb and Obi-Wan tells Luke about his father being, a great warrior, a good pilot, and a good friend. That little bit that Obi-Wan told Luke was basically the thesis for how they wrote his character in the Clone Wars. It's like, yeah, I could see this guy being one of the best Jedi ever, and who is Obi-Wan's best friend. So,
Yeah. I think I like both Anakins for different reasons.
Sure.
yeah.
And I wish they were more. I wish they did a better job of
Like aligning the two.
aligning them, because I have a hard time seeing the cartoon series Anakin turning into the edgy, I hate everyone Anakin in episode 3. But the episode 3 Anakin is very very necessary.
There was an episode there's animatics out there on YouTube, like sort of the pre-finished, like, because when there were a couple episodes they still cut from the final season, but there's one where Anakin is clearly mad about what happened with Ahsoka, and also kind of mad at her for like he sees her leaving the Jedi Order is also partially
Her abandoning him.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cut for some reason, but it's clear that like he's starting to become more temperamental and bitter. And Obi-Wan's just like, okay, dude, how about you chill out a little bit here?
Speaking of which, there may be that disconnect for Anakin, but I feel like the Obi-Wan in this show
It's very
is
consistent.
very natural and
I
consistent
agree.
with...
It was midway through the show before I realized it was a different voice actor.
that it wasn't Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
He
they're
def-
making that Obi-Wan movie.
Yeah.
I don't
Or is
know
it
if
like
that's
sh-
going to be any
Is it a
good.
movie or a show?
I think it's a movie.
Oh, it's
I would hope it's a movie.
Obi-Wan's snarkiness is probably my favorite thing about the Clone Wars.
right.
Just constantly roasting Anakin. They have a good back and forth relationship too.
Yeah, they tease each other like brothers would, but also keep
Yep.
each other in line like brothers
Obi-Wan still is definitely like the mentor and
would. Definitely.
the almost sort of father figure to Anakin in
But
some
Anakin
ways.
will chime in with a few things that's like, yeah, but, and that's
Yep.
a good point.
And Obi-Wan will kind of reluctantly see his points. So they have a good back and forth
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Obi-Wan is the best character in Star Wars.
Oh,
in my
yeah.
opinion.
In general, yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
he's in every episode, so
Yeah.
He is. No?
yes.
Of the real
Those
episode.
are the only episodes that matter.
Yep.
The only ones that matter,
There's Obi-Wan.
there is Obi-Wan.
That's the deciding factor. That's what I see.
There's no Obi-Wan.
They tried to fix it by bringing back Ian McDermott, but it didn't quite work.
So,
Speaking of which, I love all the episodes where with Emperor Palpatine, or with Senator Palpatine, I should
it's-
say, where him and Anakin have an exchange, and then Anakin walks out the room, and you see Palpatine smile to himself. Like,
I think that's where like the show Anakin ties together with the movie Anakin, because they definitely maintain that sort of manipulative relationship that Palpatine has with him, where he's
Yeah.
kind of
like all the Palpatine episodes, you know that under his like stoic politician face, he's
he's
evil
definitely
grinning
a villain.
and cackling. It's so good, and it's so subtle too.
Yeah, and
like
the
in
random-
the animations and expressions,
Random
and
episodes
voices.
where it'll just be a different voice
Nigel
actor.
Thornberry is voice acting him. And I'm like, what is going on? They went back to him. Like they had him for a couple episodes. Nigel Thornberry as the voice actor for Palpatine, and then they went back to the old voice actor, and then they went back to Nigel Thornberry again. I was like, is he like getting sick or something? And comes back, and then I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what that whole deal was, but
Me neither, but
It
it was
didn't
kind of funny.
Regardless, I think the writing of Palpatine was fantastic, especially when he could go into full Sidious mode and just revel in being evil.
Yep.
right.
Because you can clearly tell that Palpatine has fun being evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in control the whole time.
General Grievous is just kind of there.
Yeah.
He's fun. He's cool. He throws
Everyone
out his
is a
forearms.
pawn.
Things. He just is a
Count
thing.
Dooku he's
He-
kind of interesting. I don't know. He's kind of a
He
one-note
does his
villain.
thing.
It wasn't until I watched the Clone Wars that I realized that that Dooku was
Like the president of the Separatists.
no
Or
that
what?
he was Tyrannus. I didn't realize he was
Oh,
Tyrannus. I
sure.
didn't get the whole thing in episode 2 where like I worked for a guy named Tyrannus, and like the person he was in charge of getting the clones made.
Mhm.
Yep.
And he knew about it the whole time.
And
I never
killed-
realized
and
that.
killed Master Sifo-Dyas and all that stuff.
And there's a whole arc where Obi-Wan goes and investigates the origin of the clones, and it's like, yeah,
It gets very
it's
close.
kind of dodgy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they're like, we have no more information at this point because all the evidence is dead, so we're just going to keep rolling.
Yeah.
Smart move.
So, yeah.
We
Any
should probably get into the
transcendentals, yeah. we got-
I
Getting up there.
guess.
So, what are some truths we can get out of the Clone Wars?
Humans are humans, no matter their origin or state of like development.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Self-sacrifice is basically the character trait of the clones, by and large.
Right.
There's a few
But also
aberrant clones here and there, but
But the point is, it's like the value of human life, right?
yeah,
They throw themselves away, and they get thrown away. And what we realize when in experiencing these characters that they're people that they're losing brothers, they're losing
Yep.
friends, they're losing not just numbers.
yep,
You know, it's people are people, no matter their origin point or their anything. It's
Mhm. The clones
That-
fight for each other as much as for the Jedi and the Republic.
right.
right. They are not just biological droids as
The
they
show
were
kind of
first
plays
looked like.
with free will a bit in that.
In that respect, because there is that episode early on where Rex is confronted with the choice that a deserter made to just go make a family
I mean,
in a
he was
lighthouse.
kind of a deserter. He was also kind of abandoned. Like his whole unit was killed,
That
and he was
too,
the only
which-
one
That
left.
Geonosis, yeah.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's like, if you had a choice, do you have a choice?
if you had the chance to change your feet, would you?
And that's kind of Rex's internal conflict the entire show. It's like, who do I choose
Yep.
to be loyal to? What is my choice?
Yep.
Do I have free will in this? Do I have to serve the Republic because I'm programmed to?
Yep.
Am I serving the Jedi because I'm programmed to, or because Anakin and Ahsoka are my friends?
That's the thing too that makes Order 66 more believable. Is like you see how like the clones if they had their own choice, they would not have chosen to betray the Jedi.
Yeah.
But because that choice was taken from them, like against their will, if that's able to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's just general, seeking goodness and virtue and
Seeking
saving
truth.
life.
Saving life, heroism.
The Jedi stand for these things very much.
Yes.
They're peacekeepers, even though they're kind of forced to fight a war and kind
Which
of
is
compromise themselves a
kind
little
of the
bit.
ironic thing, and they are forced into compromising
Ironic.
positions, and it kind of leads to the state they're in Episode 3, where they just kind of make all the wrong calls, and it
Even-
leads Anakin down the dark side.
Even though Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order, she still very much holds with her the lessons she learned from being a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But also holds with her the lessons she learned from being kicked out of the Jedi and
Yeah.
being the apprentice of Anakin.
Yep.
And that's stuff that shows up later.
Think for
like-
herself and also make, good decisions and things like that. So
Right. So she become, and that's kind of back to the free will thing. It's like the Jedi Order kind of binds the commitment to the Jedi Order binds what you're allowed to do to certain things.
Yep.
And so it's like, is being in the Jedi Order worth forsaking those things? For Obi-Wan, yes. For Ahsoka,
And
no.
Anakin.
And Anakin. But Anakin for less noble reasons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can understand from a guy who's about to be married. I can understand why he was seduced. I mean, he
Well,
turned to the dark side
Not that way.
purely because not that way. Seduced to the dark side. He wanted to save his wife,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
which he cared about more than anything else.
Which is honestly, Anakin's entire arc in the prequel trilogy is,
Ultimately a sympathetic one.
because he starts out as a slave with absolutely nothing to his name and the desire to go out and become powerful enough to free the slaves.
Yep.
He has no agency. He has no choice. He has no power. He wants that.
Yep.
He tries to find that in the Jedi Order, but he finds people stopping him at every corner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're afraid of what he's capable of.
Exactly. And so, and then he fails to save his mother with all the power that he gained. He still couldn't save his mother.
Yep.
And then his wife is threatened, and he's like, well, with all this power, I need to be able to save her. Is it possible to learn this power? And
Yep.
Palpatine's like, not from a Jedi.
Yep.
I got you.
Got your back, bro. But I actually don't. She's gonna die. You'll
Yep.
think you did it, and it'll torment you for
Well,
years.
he did kind of did it. I mean, she wouldn't have died if he hadn't turned to the dark side.
She died of a broken heart, which I still can't get over. But we're not talking
Hey,
about
there is
episode.
The
actually-
elves in Lord of the Rings die of heartbreak.
So
It's
there's
still
actually-
dumb.
There's actually kind of a theory I heard where the Darth Plagueis method of bringing life to people is because you have to steal it from somebody else. And so the theory that I've heard is that in order to save Anakin, Palpatine drained Padme's life force to keep him alive. That's just out
A
there
theory.
theory that I heard to
Yeah.
make that actually make sense. And
Makes
kinda
more
be
sense
cool.
than what's stated in it. But we're not talking about episode 3.
Anyway,
I would love a Palpatine prequel show about him to learn about Plagueis and that process and all the stuff involved.
Yeah.
That would be great. Anyway, Disney, if you're listening, and I know
Goodness.
we
Goodness.
should move on.
you are, we should move on. We're
Goodness.
going long.
Goodness.
Goodness me. Goodness gracious.
Goodness.
A lot of the things we've talked about already.
Ahsoka and Rex.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good. Like,
Obi-Wan. Very
and
good.
Obi-Wan, obviously. I want
I
to...
mean, the Brotherhood of the Clones too.
Yeah. The friendship that they have, especially when we get to the finale of the whole series, when Ahsoka is on the ship
Yeah.
at the time of Order 66, and even though she's not a
She
Jedi,
wants to save all of them, and she can't.
hmm But she saves Rex. She bars a door closed to all the clones who are trying to get in there, and
Oh yeah, and they're also
They get-
transporting Maul, and they break him out to help them take.
oh yeah, that's right. He was on the ship. They had gotten
They finally
Maul.
captured him, but then she had to break him out in order to escape Order 66.
Right.
That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like being able to sacrifice herself, or nearly sacrifice herself for the sake of even one
One
clone.
clone, yeah.
Yep. If she had the chance, she would have saved all of them.
If you had the chance.
To see if you get a
Right.
friends.
And who was the other clone? The ARC trooper who was their friend who did
Fives.
not get. That was 5. No,
No, wait,
Fives
wait.
was the one who got killed because
Jesse.
he knew too much.
Jesse. Yeah,
Jesse.
Jesse was trying to kill Ahsoka and Rex on that ship.
Because he was
And
still
they
under
were
the
trying
control of Order 66.
And then Rex was trying to defend Ahsoka. Like, she's not even a Jedi anymore. Why you don't need to kill her? And they're like, nah, she's still a Jedi.
They do everything they can to avoid killing the clones, even when they're trying to kill them.
Yeah.
But I think they just crash the ship, don't they?
Yep.
They do.
Yeah.
And they end up dying, yeah.
Which is
I don't remember how.
Because
Ahsoka and
Maul
Rex
like destroyed the
survived.
reactor or something
Yeah.
on the ship. Basically forces a crash land. But anyway, any other elements of goodness that we wanted to highlight?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's too many
There's
episodes.
a lot to talk about in the show. We could talk about it
But
for much
basically,
longer.
just Obi-Wan and the Anakin's Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of the Clones.
Mhm.
They're kind of just a found family almost. It's
Yep.
kind of dysfunctional sometimes, and they bicker, and there's conflict. But what family doesn't have that?
Yep.
But there's loyalty. There's a search for truth and a
And
attempt at
honor.
justice and honor. Yeah.
Beauty.
Well,
Very
early-
well written show.
Early on, the animation is kind of rough and the art
Clunky.
direction is a little clunky.
Yep.
But like
Over time,
over time,
it
gets
ages like
really
fine
good.
wine.
The final season is cinematic.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah.
It's like by the time we get to the final season, the final couple seasons, the framing, the lighting, the particle effects, the models, the textures, it's all
widescreen.
right.
Yeah.
So good. And then like they follow that up with Bad Batch. It looks like it's live action set pieces with animated characters in it.
Yeah.
So good.
I think the final fight between Darth Maul and Ahsoka was actually motion captured with Ray
of course
Park.
it was. Oh, the guy that played
Yeah, Ray.
Maul?
Yep, he was Darth Maul.
So good.
Yeah.
There was like one season in the middle. I think it was like 5 or 6, where they slightly changed the way lightsabers looked, and they just looked like rubber. And I did not like it. Like they were all every swing was like it turned into
There was like a spear frame?
loop. It was like it like the blade bent like a rubber, and I was like, I'm not a fan of that. But
Yeah. Anyway,
I digress.
but yeah, the animation ages like fine wine over the course of the series,
Yeah, over the
as
course-
well as the writing.
early stuff in the first movie, it's kind of rough.
Yeah.
And the writing even is it's just
but
kind of
it's
rough. They're
still
finding their
enjoyable.
footing.
Like if you're patient with the show,
And if you like Star Wars in the first place, more Star Wars is just going to be fun.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the music is still like written in the spirit of John Williams, or did he?
Right. I don't think he was directly involved.
He
But
didn't
there are
have
times
anything
where
to do
his
with it.
like themes and leitmotifs come in to accentuate characters and
Yeah,
such.
yeah.
And even and all the incidental music is very much in that vein. It's just not him.
Yep.
So it's like keeps the spirit of Star Wars and even pulls from a lot of the same themes and ideas. It's just just not directly John Williams, but very John Williams adjacent, let's say.
Yeah. The let's talk about Dave Filoni for a bit, because I think he's
That's the man behind the show. He's
Yeah.
the showrunner.
The
And he
primary-
works very closely with George Lucas to get this
Yeah.
show right and its look right, and he collaborated with George Lucas to create the entire culture and architecture of Mandalore, which they reverse engineered from Boba Fett's armor.
yep.
So good.
The other thing too is like previous projects he'd worked on were Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is you definitely see that sort of signature, like like characters going on an adventure, and you learn something about the character through the adventure they're going on.
Yeah.
There's many episodes of Avatar like that, but I think character is what Dave Filoni understands very well, and he brings fully to bear in the show. And
I think-
the projects he's worked on since with The
Right.
Mandalorian and Bad Batch and
I think when Rebels started to get good was when they brought him on board to
Yeah.
helm it. It's like, okay, first couple episodes of that were like, but then it got pretty decent toward the end of season 1. Season 2 started getting good.
because Rebels got brought back around to be more like the Clone Wars by the end of the show. Yep,
to the point where they brought Clone Wars characters into it.
directly.
Right.
Yeah,
But
I only watched the episode where Ahsoka confronts Darth Vader.
that's so good.
Very good.
It's so good. And then there's that face off with Maul and Obi-Wan later in the show.
Yep.
There's the face. It's so good. But that's a different show for a different day.
Yeah, seasons 2 and 3 are very good.
Seasons 3 and 4 are great because Thrawn.
I don't think there was a season 4.
There was 4 seasons.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
Season
Anyway,
1 and 2.
we're talking about Clone Wars. So yeah,
We're
very
talking about Clone
very
Wars.
beautiful show.
And
Unity.
the man behind it went on to make some pretty great Star Wars stuff later.
Yeah. Unity. What brings everything together in the Clone Wars?
Star Wars.
The Clone Wars.
Yeah.
The
It's-
clones.
It's a show about war and the cost of war and what people do in response to war.
Mm-hmm.
There's several arcs we go on where it's like, who wants to remain neutral? Why are people separatists? Why are they staying with the Republic?
Mm-hmm.
It's a war-focused show, but it's also focused on the characters in the war and how they respond to it and what they do with it.
Which is another thing that Dave Filoni kind of brought with him from Avatar, because you have all these people, these kids, existing in the middle of this giant war among nations, and how they navigate that. So it kind of that sort of skill set kind of translates naturally over to this.
And so the war is constantly at the center of every episode.
Yep.
And it kind of guides the way that the characters and conflicts play out. Because it's like, well, it's about the Clone Wars. What are the clones like? How do they feel about this clone war that is
Yep.
that they're named after, that are named after them? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how did the Jedi feel about having to step up as generals after being passive peacekeepers all this time?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It sucks for them, and they don't like it.
I think that the Jedi should have stayed out of politics altogether.
Probably
It's
would've been
implied
better
that
for them in
it's
long run.
implied throughout Star Wars that the Jedi fell long before the Order did.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Palpatine recognized it and jumped right on that.
And exploited it.
I will say the show did make the whole Anakin bringing balance to the Force thing make more sense.
Yeah.
Because
There was that weird 3-part episode in the middle where they
Right.
go to the Force dimension
Yes.
with like the father, son, and daughter.
that was dumb.
That was weird.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it was
Most of
cool,
that whole
but
arc, I'm like, what the
weird.
heck happened?
What even is this?
Yeah.
It's on some level like symbolically cool, but at the same time, it's like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
Is this literal or figurative? What dimension does this exist in? What?
Not to introduce too much new stuff at the end of the podcast, but the whole Onderon arc where you're introduced to Saw Gerrera and all those people, sort of laying
Oh,
the
yeah.
foundations for the rebellion later. Those were kind of cool.
That's
the
kinda
cost,
cool.
the cost of war and becoming compromised by the fight. But
Hondo Onaka is funny.
yeah, he's there.
He's the pirate guy voiced by
He's
Jim
a
Cummings.
Oh,
super
yeah.
funny.
He's a ruffian.
He's
But
fun.
I think
As long as we're introducing new stuff at the end.
we should probably be done. We
should
could talk
probably.
about this for a long time and
Well,
probably
it's a
will.
7-season long show with disconnected arcs.
Yes.
Well, they're connected,
They're
but like
connected, but they're. I mean,
They're
we
not
didn't even-
about each other.
We could talk about the time they went to the It's a Trap place.
yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the water planet.
Underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
They did do that in the 2002
they did.
series first, though.
They did.
They did.
So
Yeah.
it might have been a reference to
The
that.
fish
they even
people.
had Kit Fisto in there
Yep.
with his aquaticness.
Yep.
Anyway, do the sign off thing.
Yeah, we should be done. We
Do
need
the
to be
sign
done, or
off.
else we'll talk about this forever. So, thank you, John, for being on the podcast.
You're welcome.
Subbing for Riley this week, so we'll be back with stuff next week. But at any rate, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. If you made it this far, thank you. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts.
Odds are you know at least one place to listen to us because you're listening to us now.
Yeah. Leave us a rating to let us know what you think. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Papists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com.
I have yet to rate you.
Well, Faith has, so I guess you're covered.
She did?
Yeah, I think she requested Aquaman via email, if I remember
Me.
correctly. But
No. She did. She.
anyway, it
did
doesn't matter. We'll talk to you guys again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.